Hello, my name is Mark Brohan, and I'm the Vice President of B2B and Market Research Development for Digital Commerce 360. And we welcome you to today's webinar, Selecting a Marketplace Platform from DC 360 and McFadyen Digital. And to start things off, you in attendance today picked a good one. You picked a hot one. There is no hotter discussion topic in e-commerce today, whether it's the B2C side or the B2B side, than looking at the value, the strategic implementation, the technology, the sheer blocking and tackling of looking at a marketplace. They come in all shapes, all sizes, but a critical component of that is looking at the strategy and the underlying infrastructure for what is the best platform to put into play here. How to make it right for your enterprise, how to make it right for your ROI, how to make it and justify it for what you want to do, whether you're a B2C merchant or a B2B manufacturer or wholesaler. We intend to cover some very detailed ground in our webinar today. So let's take a look at our agenda here. So we intend to go end zone to end zone on educating folks here today on what is the trend driving marketplace development. And then we're going to go into a lot of really good takeaway best practice advice on why invest in a marketplace, what's in it for you as an individual organization. Then we're going to really kind of take a look at who are the marketplace vendors and technology firms out there. What do they do? How do they differ? Do they do the same thing, or what makes each one different? And Tom McFadyen is going to take a look at going into depth there. And then frankly, we're going to spend a great deal of time looking at the ins and outs of how to do it right, how to do platform selection the right way, first time, every time. So you kind of take the long view and not just the short-term ROI view of what's happening with a marketplace platform, technology selection, and all that entails with that. So let's take a look at some trends here to kind of put the perspective into why marketplaces are suddenly the hottest topic around on both sides of e-commerce. So I'm going to share a little bit of research that we've done at Digital Commerce 360. And we've been around for 20 plus years. You know, we have the world's biggest e-commerce database. And so we do a lot of research on both sides of e-commerce, B2C and B2B. And I guess I'm somewhat unique, or maybe the lone standing graybeard for this. I go all the way back to when Amazon first began. So I can tell you, I was there when eBay got going, and I've watched the evolution of marketplaces take forth across first B2C, and now the headwinds and the momentum driving B2B marketplace growth on the B2B side. So yeah, a lot happening, but let's kind of take a look at our first picture here, which is, first off, Tom, want to tell us a little about McFadyen Digital and what you folks are doing with marketplace development and research these days?
Sure, thanks, Mark. Appreciate the introduction opportunity here. So just one slide about McFadyen Digital, but 4 points. First is we do big projects. We've been doing enterprise scale, pretty much every dimension on which you can measure e-commerce or marketplaces. We've really been pushing the limits to the millions or billions in terms of dollars or assets or page views or SKU counts and so forth. So we worked with about 10% of the Fortune 500. We're also very experienced, like Mark, been around for a third of a century, providing digital solutions, serving about 10% of the Fortune 500, almost a quarter century building e-commerce since the early days of ATG in the late 90s, helping clients generate tens of billions of dollars of GMV, and 15 years focused on marketplaces. Again, billions of dollars of GMV cumulatively between our clients. Third point, we're a global organization, a couple hundred people spread across the US, nearshore in Brazil for about a decade, and offshore in India for about 2 decades. And last but not least, perhaps most important to this discussion, is we're really thought leaders and innovators. About over 15 years ago, we published a book, E-commerce Best Practices. We just published Amazon bestseller, Marketplace Best Practices, which this webinar is part of the series of monthly webinars on marketplace best practices. The Marketplace Sweet Spot Report that many of you have probably downloaded already is another one of our examples of thought leadership around marketplaces. and we're generally publishing some new content every month or every couple months around marketplaces. So hand it back to you, Mark.
All right. Let's take a look at some of the current trends shaping marketplace development, both on the business to consumer side and the B2B side. So, first clue of the day is something we already know. Marketplaces are hot. They are red hot. And let's start with looking at the business to consumer side. As I mentioned when I first began talking here just a few minutes ago, I remember the day when there was a handful, and I'm talking 4 to 5, marketplaces that were out there, kind of all on their own. Newegg was one of the first online retailers to launch their own version of this. And I remember when they launched that. eBay set the trend, of course, years and years ago. But one of the things that's evolved on the B2C side is that the growth in the top 100 marketplaces that we follow in our database, our top 1,000 database, is that there's a two-sided trend going on here. Not only are these driving substantial amounts of gross merchandise volume within their own right, the tail of the tape, if you will, if you're kind of looking at the number that showcases the growth of B2C marketplaces in general, but a similar trend here. And what I want to point out is if you look at the sheer volume of marketplaces and how they're influencing both online retail sales and omni-channel sales. So 92% of consumers shopped on a marketplace last year. That is a very telling metric onto its own. And then 21% are looking for a new alternative. So the takeaway there is that marketplace spend and marketplace behavior by consumer is influenced on what they find, but more importantly, what they do not find. And so if your marketplace strategy on the online retail side is savvy enough where you're attracting new consumers, but you're looking at their buyer behavior, not just on the marketplace, but more importantly, how is that driving other sales across your platform or driving sales to your platform? That is a key trend to watch, specifically now as we're getting into probably the uncanniest fourth quarter I think we've ever come across. So who envisioned 2 years ago, when the world was still somewhat normal, that we would have this unprecedented supply chain problem, or the fact that retailers would not have what we want in stock for the holidays for the usual shipping migration? So my point there's a lot more attention being paid to product selection, product delivery, customer service, and not just the retail sites are in on this. A lot more activity being influenced on the B2C marketplace side because of those very same trends. Our next slide is going to show a little more on that. So if you look at where our top 1,000 are currently participating on the business to consumer side, well, newsflash, it is not particularly new because web merchants have been using marketplaces forever. However, what is interesting is if you look at the takeaway here is if you look at our second slide here, share of top 1,000 versus next 1,000. And for those of us who have been doing this for many years, I see the top 1,000 as our biggest online retailers, and we see the next batch as the up and comers. But look at these stats. Those stats are telling in a way that tells you this, that marketplaces are a big deal with both big merchants and smaller, medium-sized, up-and-coming merchants. So the takeaway here is that marketplaces are becoming more important to online retailers, big and small, than ever before for those reasons. And if you look at what source of the top 100 have these, then it's once again it's varied. It used to be skewed way over 50%. Now it's much more even than that, very balanced. So my point is, online retailers have gotten B2C marketplaces for quite some time. They've had longer to kind of figure out their transaction analysis and their spending, and in other words, kind of rifle shot the approach for there, because it's one model that has been around forever, and now there's just much more choices of technologies to select. But it's only one side of the ball here. So our next slide is going to look at a few more of the growth particularly. But look, these are the numbers I really want to kind of showcase before I get into the B2B side of things. So for instance, 1.45, 1.45, 1.45, 972.51. My friends, these are billions and trillions. And that volume shows you just how big an impact on the entire e-commerce sales ecosystem that Marketplace is accounting for. So over the years, this is a telling stat that shows you how big a chunk of sales are now accounted for by B2C marketplaces. And I can tell you, every year when we do this report, that number goes nothing but up. So that is what's happening on the B2C side. The chief takeaway there, marketplace activity, of course, increasing, influencing offline and online buyer behavior, big driver with B2C marketplaces these days. And of course, the numbers keep heading up. Now, let's look at the B2B side for just a couple of quick slides here before we get into the next heart of things. All right. The only thing that business to business has in common with business to consumer when it comes to marketplaces is the term marketplace. So that's it, because the needs, the wants, the criteria for why a buyer or a seller on the B2B side would go to a marketplace is much, much different. Because why? Well, just in general, B2B transactions are much more complex. They are much more industry specific. But having said that, I think it's pretty well known that COVID-19 and the pandemic changed, the landscape for how fast business to commerce is rolling out, B2B commerce, if you will. That's a fact. What's not understood is that the fastest growing part of B2B e-commerce right here, right now, is B2B marketplaces. And why is that? Simple. When everybody went digital and branches closed down and factories closed down, and we're all at home still trying to buy for our respective organization, what was the path forward? Digital. And when your traditional supplier couldn't get that to you, a whole legion across vertical industries like that, we can keep on counting it today, began for the very first time looking at marketplaces. What did that do? As I mentioned, set up a bit of a feeding frenzy on marketplace development, marketplace launches, marketplace growth, but these two stats are telling. So the pandemic, accelerated marketplace development on the B2B side, but a lot up in the air. But a telling stat, 3 years ago, when my colleague Paul Demery and I looked at this segment, we counted maybe 70. This year, for one report that we did this summer, we counted 250. And my takeaway here is I could have stopped at 400. That's how fast these marketplaces on the B2B side are coming together. And the one last slide I want to kind of give you here, which is to kind of put this all in the perspective that by our count, B2B marketplaces are not just a sliver of the total B2B pie. Almost 4% of all transactions in less than 18 months now go through some type of B2B marketplace. And this year and probably next year, B2B marketplaces will be the fastest growing part of B2B commerce as a whole. So now that's some perspective on what's happening with the trends shaping the market. Let's go talk technology vendors. So we're going to look in depth at what makes some of these key vendors for marketplace services applications tick. We're going to look at Mirakl, Spryker, Ultra Commerce, Unirgy, VTEX, and Webkul to kind of take a look at this. And Tom is going to go through in depth the strength and why each one has some unique references for each of the marketplaces we're talking about here. So Tom, it's all yours.
And be there. Thank you, Mark. And thanks for sharing those insights from Digital Commerce 360. I always look forward to the DCC 360 marketplace report, and we love subscribing to your database of details on each of those vendors and each of those merchants, B2B or retail. You really can learn a lot. One of those slides that really jumped out at me is half of the marketplaces grew at 50% or more. How many, if you took an average of e-commerce companies, how many of them are growing at 50% or more? That's certainly not happening in most e-commerce or retail, for that matter. 50% growth for half of the companies and 14% doubling. That's amazing stats on the growth of those companies that are operating a marketplace. So let's start off with a framework for which we're going to evaluate these 7 marketplace vendors. So we're going to use some graphs, and they're going to be 2 axes for comparison and then some additional data. One of the axes is going to be the marketplace maturity model. So this describes 5 tiers, kind of like the CMM or CMMI capability maturity model of evolution along this marketplace journey. So first tier is first party e-commerce. It's been around quarter century since the introduction of SSL. The operator of an e-commerce operator has to go through this whole pipeline of activity, sequential activities of sourcing goods, negotiating contracts, managing images, merchandising the goods, setting the price, stocking, holding the goods both physically and financially, fulfilling them, handling returns, handling customer support, a whole series and sequence of labor-intensive activities that are on the shoulders of the e-commerce operator. The second tier in this marketplace maturity model is dropship, which outsources one of those aspects of that sequential pipeline of activities, which is essentially just the fulfillment. So the operator still has to negotiate contracts, upload images, merchandise the good, handle customer support, set the price on it. So it's an incremental step above, better than first-party e-commerce. The real platform in your business level gets to the third-party marketplace, or level 3 of the MMM, marketplace maturity model. So in this case, the marketplace operator, outsources a lot of those activities, from sourcing goods, merchandising them, loading images, defining the SEO text, determining the price, holding them both financially and physically, fulfilling them, processing returns. All that is outsourced to third-party sellers, which enables huge scalability and huge cost reductions for the marketplace operator. The operator still has control of things, so they can curate the categories and products and so forth. But this really is where you platform your business. Beyond that, as marketplaces scale to have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of SKUs, you really need some data and automated systems through which you manage the SKUs, manage the thousands or tens of thousands of sellers, manage your category mix, your in-store versus online versus first-party versus third-party goods sourcing, really letting the numbers drive the business. That's where you can really even further optimize the margins on the business and scale more profitably. And the 5th level is optimizing, where you're really just transforming the business, adding new capabilities. For example, selling physical goods and selling services to go along with those. An example might be Amazon selling a third-party ceiling fan and selling the services of a third-party electrician that's local to provide the installation services. Additional integrations, automations, onboarding of new sellers, and so forth. So lots of ways in which businesses can optimize there. So this marketplace maturity model really goes into a lot of details. If you want to learn more about it, we have a very detailed white paper on this. You can go to McFadyen.com/MMM, marketplace maturity model. You can't read this slide, but there's a lot of really good detail in there that explains this journey along the marketplace maturity model. But the main point of that is it's going to be one of that criteria upon which we judge the vendors, the marketplace vendors. The second criteria, major criteria, is the scalability. So we look at 4 main metrics for scalability. GMV, gross merchandise value, or the total dollar value of everything sold, first party and third party. The SKU count, so how many products and variants, meaning the SKUs of that product, are being maintained. How many third party sellers will be operating, selling on that marketplace, and the project budget. Project budget includes the software fees, plus the professional services for design and implementation. So those are 4 metrics, and we give you 3 reference points. Kind of like a small, medium, large, starting at the bottom, SME, small, medium business, that's going to sell maybe $10 million of gross merchandise value with 10,000 SKUs from 50 sellers and have a budget of $100,000. On the other extreme, the enterprise, you may be targeting $1 billion of gross merchandise value with 1 million SKUs from 5,000 sellers, and you have a budget of a couple $1 million to implement, and mid-market in between there. So those are the 2 dimensions. Again, we'll have the horizontal axis of the marketplace maturity model. And just to put some other things in context when we talk about who these vendors are, some of them are best of breed or pure play. This doesn't necessarily mean they're the best vendor, but a best of breed approach means I'm going to take the best e-commerce engine for me. I'm going to take the best OMS, order management system for me. I'm going to take the best marketplace system for me, the best content management system for me, and stitch them all together. So you would stitch together a marketplace best of breed or pure play with an e-commerce platform. So e-commerce platform might be Magento, Shopify, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, SAP Hybris or SAP Commerce Cloud. Those would be handling the first party commerce and some dropship. Alternately, there are some vendors we're going to talk about that are full stack. So they combine e-commerce plus marketplace capability. Since they're not really best of breed or pure play marketplaces, they tend to not be as mature or feature rich in the marketplace side of things, but they do have value of adding e-commerce and usually OMS and perhaps a PIM, product information management, in addition to the e-commerce and marketplace. So they have a much broader offering, but generally we've seen the pure play marketplace vendors seem to get a little bit more advanced in their capabilities in a lot of marketplace. And again, the second category that we're going to measure or assess the vendors on is the scalability. So enterprise at the top, the $1 billion of GMV with 1 million SKUs and $2 million budget, down to the SMB, or it could be a departmental proof of concept or a pilot project targeting about 10 million of gross merchandise value with a $100,000 budget. So let's jump into those 7 vendors. First, we're going to look at them, again, we're going to look at them in alphabetical order. So Marketplacer. The solid line on this graph is the curve of Marketplacer, or the sweet spots, which the ideal locations for Marketplacer. It's not going to be the cheapest there. It's not going to be, it is also not the top highest scalability one in terms of marketplace capability. But it does also offer some, if desired, some commerce and dropship capability. Most of the clients of Marketplacer opt to go with Salesforce Commerce Cloud, Adobe Magento Commerce, or Shopify, or another commerce engine that's pretty robust. But let's talk a little bit about Marketplacer. Can we see the $3 sign? That's on our scale of cost. $1 to $4 signs representing the cost. So about Marketplacer. So it's got a lot of great strengths, a very modern technology stack. Some of the more recent API interfaces, GraphQL, others will be just REST APIs, webhooks, event-driven architecture. They have a great feature for easily connecting to a lot of common seller e-commerce platforms. So a lot of times sellers will use a lower end platform like lower end meaning lower cost, but very popular platform like Shopify. So MConnect allows quick connection to that. It's got a very good rich set of marketplace features, like most of the pure play best of breed marketplace platforms. And they raised about $100 million investment, which is helping them grow quite a bit. So this is a good option, if especially if Salesforce Commerce Cloud is your commerce platform, because Salesforce was one of the many investors in Marketplacer. It's a good platform for B2C. They also have a nice option for headless, where you can use parts of that commerce front end without using a full stack e-commerce engine. Good fit for mid-market and enterprise, and also good if you want to quickly add a lot of third-party sellers with that MConnect connector. A lot of data on the right. I'm not going to read through that. This, as Mark said, this PowerPoint, this presentation will be available to folks afterwards. Happy to send that out to you guys. Let's go on to the second vendor in alphabetically, Mirakl. So the sweet spot fit for them is definitely in the top upper right quadrant, if you will, in terms of scalability and marketplace maturity model. It's also got the biggest expense. So you're looking at probably $500,000 to north of $1 million typically for implementation for first year costs. But it does tie in with some of the larger e-commerce engines. So SAP Hybris, Commerce Tools, one of the few platforms to tie in with those higher end modern commerce tools, especially as a modern commerce engine. With Adobe, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and Shopify. So some of the strengths for Mirakl. It is definitely the most proven, and in our ratings for this, pretty much every vendor claims to do enterprise. We judge this based on the number of production reference enterprise clients for each of these vendors. They also offer a nice vendor aggregation network, which is Mirakl Connect, kind of like a channel advisor that includes thousands of sellers already connected into the Mirakl ecosystem. You still need to do some data harmonization and integration of order management and so forth with the sellers. But that's a nice benefit. And in terms of the most powerful catalog ingestion, data harmonization, seller management, customer support, Mirakl tops in most of those categories, not just in individual ones, but you'll see down at the bottom, there's complex permutations where you combine multiple sellers with multiple variants, multiple locales, multiple promotions, some B2C, some B2B, very scalable in terms of those unique use cases at the enterprise scale. They also raised the most money of any of the vendors, close to $1 billion, and have 500 employees focused on their marketplace offering, which is the largest headcount focused on marketplace. Next in our alphabetical ranking is Spryker. So Spryker has a very good first-party commerce and dropship capabilities built into the platform with OMS built in as well. Not as scalable on the marketplace side of things, which is you'll see most typical of the full stack vendors that combine commerce plus marketplace plus typically OMS. Reasonably priced though. So it's a full stack, very modern platform. Has a very interesting state machine for building custom business logic based on XML, graphical presentation of that, reasonable pricing. They also raised a good chunk of money, $150 million recently. And again, this is a good full stack option if you also want the commerce, the order management system, fairly sophisticated OMS. Again, the OMS and most of these vendors won't compete with a pure play best of breeds, like a Sterling or Manhattan, but very good, competent OMS from Spryker. If you have a technically competent team, they'll definitely like the technology of Spryker. And it also has quite a few options for integration into backend systems. So next, we'll talk about Ultra Commerce. Ultra Commerce is a more attractively priced alternative here. Again, decent, good first-party e-commerce and dropship capability, OMS built in. Not as strong or powerful on the marketplace, again, as typical of the full-stack providers. But they also have a nice PDM, product data management platform, Vesta, and also simplified, again, reasonable pricing, attractive pricing for that wider range of products, e-commerce, OMS, PIM, PDM, CMS, the content management system, and some marketplace capabilities. It also uses some standards-based open platforms, Spring Boot and Hibernate, easy integration into progressive web apps, PWA. So from a technology integration, great option here as well. And especially if you're looking for a robust product data management platform, the recent acquisition of Vesta is a good thing to consider. Unirgy. Unirgy is an interesting company with a strong, especially for Magento, strong marketplace offering, pure play. Been around doing marketplace for about a decade. Ties in most strongly with Magento. Some integrations with Shopify and BigCommerce as the commerce front end, not as mature as the Magento integration. But very robust set of marketplace capabilities. Nice thing about Unirgy and one of the other vendors, Webkul, is that these are the only two vendors where you get the full source code for the marketplace platform. So if you want to do your own coding of extensions, unlike the pure SaaS or PaaS, software as a service or platform as a service vendors, with Unirgy, you get the full source code and do a lot of extensions and build some custom business requirements that you can't do with some of the pure SaaS platforms. VTEX, the only IPO or public company here, has a good enterprise scale commerce engine, proven over nearly 2 decades in first party e-commerce and dropship. Newer to the marketplace, they have an interesting approach to that. Reasonable but upper end pricing on VTEX. Some decent marketplace capabilities. Again, not competing with not on par with the top best of breed marketplaces, but a very good offering for a lot of companies that it may suit their needs depending again on what the use cases and the business requirements are. VTEX can be a great option. They do have a very modern offering with some, and they're the only Mach certified vendor, which Mach Alliance is a microservices API first cloud native headless architecture or approach to technology, which is really proven to be the future of web applications and rapidly growing organization. If you're not familiar with it, I certainly suggest looking into it. We were one of the first members of the McFadyen Alliance at McFadyen Digital. They have an interesting low-code environment, the only company that has a low-code environment, including an app store. Much like with Shopify or Magento, you'll see an app store of extensions. VTEX has a nice app store to add add-ons. Most of those are related to commerce, some to OMS, not many for marketplace. But they do have the largest employee headcount, the only public company, raised about almost $750 million in their IPO. And a good mix, good solution if you also operate physical stores. So for the omni-channel OMS, has great integration into in-store inventory. So ship to store, ship from store, use the store as a distribution point for third-party merchandise. Also, VTEX is a great option if the Latin America market is important for you. That's where they started and have a big presence in Latin America. And last but not least, Webkul. Again, one of the most attractively priced platforms. You get source code to this, like Unirgy. Good set of marketplace capabilities, proven over a decade. Again, not as scalable as some of the much more expensive platforms, but a good option with good capabilities. And many different extensions are available from Webkul. They have proven connectors into Magento, Shopify, and BigCommerce, and support a lot of the smaller, smaller merchant platforms. So, I say smaller, but Shopify is a million plus merchants using Shopify. But very, very common, very popular platform. Also good if you're looking at like a proof of concept or a departmental pilot, and you have a technically competent team available for the implementation. Good again, low cost option, but there are some technology activities that need to be done to properly implement Webkul. So those 7 vendors, we superimposed them here onto one chart, which is pretty impossible to read. To be honest, we have another chart on the next slide that'll be a little bit easier to read, but for just a quick positioning, you see the 3 full stack vendors on the left: VTEX, Spryker, UltraCommerce, in terms of their scalability. Again, a lot of this is their commerce and OMS and dropship capabilities. They tend to drop down a little bit when it comes to the marketplace capabilities, where you'll see the most expensive one, Mirakl, of course, in the upper right, Marketplace or Unirgy and Webkul in descending order here, from the pure play or best of breed vendors for marketplace only solutions, which have to be tied in with a e-commerce platform. So let's look at a more easy to read chart than that eye chart we just looked at. In this one, instead of using the marketplace maturity model, we use something similar, which is completeness of marketplace features as the x-axis. And then we plot the 7 vendors on here with the circle size representing their employee count. So the size of the circle represents their head count. The red slice represents the team focused on marketplace. So Mirakl is a pure play, only marketplace, all marketplace vendors, all marketplace company. VTEX is the largest, but they split their team between e-commerce, OMS, and marketplace. Some like marketplacer are almost all marketplace. They have a little bit of e-commerce, but again, most of their focus is on their marketplace platform. Unirgy is only marketplace. Webkul has some other add-on offerings in addition to e-commerce. But you'll kind of see the positioning here. Again, the $ represents from a 5-digit investment up to a potentially 7-digit, 7-figure investment in these platforms. All right, so that was the who. I'll jump right into the how to select the platform. So with those 7 vendors, you're maybe asking yourself, well, which one's best for me? So there are dozens and dozens of factors that you really need to consider, not just marketplace maturity model, scalability, or company size, but some related topics. And in the next few slides, we'll deep dive into about half a dozen of these. These are the top dozen out of about 50 or so factors to consider in a normal selection process. You don't need to go through all of them, but some of the key ones we're going to talk about here. Again, full stack versus best of breed, the e-commerce platform that you as an operator and your sellers are going to use, the vendors funding I mentioned a little bit in the who section, where some of these vendors are located, your revenue, your budget, scalability concerns tied in with that as well. There can be a lot of unique business models. So if you offer services, you're selling services in addition to products. If you're offering digital goods, B2C or B2B, or some of the alternate models of consumer to consumer, C2C, or consumer to business. We see sometimes models of like a Fiverr, Upwork, where an individual sells their services to a business. The importance of third-party sellers. So marketplaces are two-sided businesses. You need to equally recruit your sellers as you recruit your customers. So you need to match the number of sellers and your number of buyers or customers. And using technologies like a vendor aggregation network, the different providers have different approaches for that, and different capabilities. Some different use cases or technical features, how much you're going to be going global with your solution, the localization capabilities. Are you willing to pay a revenue share fee? Sometimes that can be 0.5% to 3% of your gross merchandise value. As you add on payment processing fees and other fees you might be having to pay out, that 15%, 20% commission you're charging your sellers can quickly get whittled away if you're paying a lot of percentage of GMV as a revenue share, rev share, or profit share, or success fee. Different vendors have different words for that. Let's dive into the first half of this, first half dozen of these. So we mentioned full stack versus best of breed. Some of the full stack vendors like Spryker, Ultra Commerce, and VTEX have a pretty good e-commerce engine. Spryker, VTEX, Ultra Commerce, pretty good commerce front end. On the marketplace side, we see more of the green, the strength of the marketplace capability from the pure plays or the best of breeds, the marketplace or Mirakl, Unirgy, and Webkul as some of the stronger, and VTEX to some extent as well, in the marketplace capability. So do you want to go full stack? Are you willing to replace your existing e-commerce engine, or are you looking to migrate your e-commerce engine to a new one? Or are you looking at a whole new business that needs both an e-commerce engine and a marketplace engine? Important consideration when selecting a marketplace vendor. So I mentioned connecting to the commerce engine. So this table here will show where, again, the pure plays or the best of breed vendors tend to have the most connections into customer-facing operator platforms. So say you're running a $100 million a year or $250 million a year e-commerce platform now, maybe on Magento or Salesforce Commerce Cloud. You may not want to replace that and use Spryker, Ultra Commerce, or VTEX for your commerce engine. You may want to connect in to, let's say, Salesforce or Magento. So Marketplace or Mirakl, Unirgy, Webkul have published connectors into Adobe. Some have Salesforce in there in development or being developed. So that can be an important consideration. Sometimes, certainly Spryker, Ultra Commerce, VTEX can be tied into separate e-commerce front ends, and there are cases where that has been done. VTEX has examples of that, integrating VTEX as a marketplace into a third-party commerce front end. However, if you want users with a published connector supported by the vendor, this may be an important consideration. Mirakl has the most connectors by operator commerce engines. Some of these developed by partners, Commerce Tools, Oracle, and Shopify. On the seller side, so if you want to connect in with sellers that operate off Shopify and Magento and BigCommerce and WooCommerce, Marketplacer with that mConnect I mentioned has some out-of-the-box connectors into those platforms. So that can quickly ease the connectivity to those sellers. You still have to do data harmonization and mapping fields and attributes and other activities, but this is a big step in the right direction for that. Mirakl also has a couple. VTEX is an interesting approach where you can easily connect VTEX sellers as merchants that use VTEX for their commerce as sellers on the VTEX network as operators, which is a very nice, appealing benefit of VTEX. Mirakl has their own vendor aggregation network I mentioned, like a channel advisor with a few thousand sellers already connected in there. So those can be quickly integrated into Mirakl Marketplace You still need to do data harmonization, field and attribute mapping, and so forth, but it certainly gets you part of the way there in connecting to more sellers. So company funding and sizing. So marketplaces are hot, as is obvious by the couple hundred of you that are on this webinar. There's a lot of interest in it. These vendors raised about $2 billion cumulatively. Their total market cap is probably a little bit under $10 billion. So $2 billion raised on a total market cap of a little under 10 billion for these four of the players. We don't have data on the other ones, but obviously a hot area. And they've been growing like weeds. So all four of these companies have more than doubled the headcount the last 2 years. VTEX nearly tripled their size with the most employees. I mentioned location. So Unirgy is the only company that actually started in the US. VTEX started in Latin America and has a very strong presence in Latin America, if that's of interest to you. Spryker and Mirakl in Europe, France and Germany, Webkul in India, and Marketplacer and Ultra Commerce in Australia. Some of the bigger ones, Mirakl and VTEX, have 100 plus employee offices in the US. Marketplacer, Spryker, and Ultra Commerce have medium-sized offices in the US. So that may be important for you. Also affects the localization. So if you need different currencies, language, tax, payment integration, and so forth, these international vendors may have better options for those different locales. One thing we've seen a lot in projects where we've helped clients migrate from one marketplace platform to another is some will underspend it by the cheapest platform, but realize it doesn't have the capability. So we've upgraded or migrated some clients from a less expensive marketplace platform to a more expensive one. We've seen the opposite as well, where some clients have gone with a very expensive marketplace platform, realize that they don't want to pay the heavy, six-figure annual fee to the marketplace vendor plus GMV percentage, and migrate to a less expensive marketplace to keep their business operating with perhaps less functionality, but sufficient for their business, but improving their margins with a less expensive platform. So again, picking the right platform isn't necessarily the cheapest or the best. There's that Goldilocks, the one that's just right for you. And the last topic I want to talk about before we get to Q&A is our methodology we call marketplace enablement steps. So we have 6 major steps here. The top row here, or swim lane, is the strategy and business decisions that need to be made. So assessment, planning, strategy, formation. I'll talk about these activities on the next slide. Then there's the MVP, business decisions. So a lot of business decisions need to be made on terms and conditions, commission grids, shipping grids, UX changes, KYC, MOR. A lot of different business activities need to happen in the MVP phase. And then similarly, when you roll out a fast follow or phase 2 on the business side of things, a lot of business decisions on the technology build. There are, again, some unique integrations for marketplaces and enhancements and so forth, and support. We're not going to talk really, we could talk for another hour about these activities, but I'm going to dive into this first block here, the assessment and planning. We'll look down here on the bottom left, you'll see this is the first chevron of the 6. In that process of selecting a marketplace platform, some things should be done first. What's your strategy? Who are your competitors? What are your key success criteria? What kind of budget are you looking at? ROI? What are your major epics of your scope? Looking at a big roadmap. Typically at this phase, we don't do detailed requirements definition, but high level, looking at a project plan, your resource, what kind of organizational chart you'll need in terms of hiring seller recruiters, seller managers, different roles in your organization to become a marketplace business. And last year, we have the tech stack selection and approach. In tech stack, the marketplace vendor is one of those pieces of the puzzle. There also are unique requirements for tax calculation in a marketplace model and payment processing in a marketplace model. Looking at that architecture and so forth, and figuring out a lot of that in the process of that puzzle piece of the marketplace platform vendor. It's definitely a very important part, but it's one of many different activities in selecting your marketplace go-to-market strategy. So that's the big picture context of how to select a marketplace platform vendor. Now I'll hand it back to Mark and our host, Tom Gatos, to go into our Q&A session.
All right, thanks, Tom, and thank you, Mark. And we have a lot of questions here, and we're going to go about maybe for the next 10 minutes here. There's no way we're going to get to all of these, so we will absolutely follow up with what has been a lot of really, really good questions about the QA module and the chat. The first one I'll set up is a little bit more, and I think, Mark, this is right on the nose for you, right? It's somebody asking, what are the specific factors and qualifications that you should look for in terms of launching a B2B marketplace versus a retail side of marketplace?
Well, thanks. Thanks for the question, Tom. So, first thing I want to emphasize is I am not a technology consultant, nor do I play one on TV. But we study a lot of the trends here, and what I can tell you is more than just at a high level. I can specifically tell you what we're seeing in verticals as different from chemicals to agriculture to healthcare to automotive, which is the why invest in a marketplace begins with the same weakness a lot of companies have. They're struggling trying to figure out what they want to do. So, Tom just gave you excellent blocking and tackling on how to go about the process here. Frankly, what we're finding in our research is a lot of companies are not looking at the research the right way. So, how and why invest in a marketplace? It comes out to beginning to do your due diligence the right way. So, you start inside. Who's your SWAT team? Who is your SWAT team? Who's on the SWAT team? And more importantly, what exactly do you want to do in terms of a marketplace to kind of move you out that is within, the confines of your enterprise? For instance, it varies from market to market. There was one distributor, and the CIO was brand new to e-commerce. He was placed in a hostile situation. It was him versus everybody else. One of these age-old, 100-year-old distributors where everybody was talking a good game, nobody's doing it. So the first thing he did was to go out and sell an Amazon business on a marketplace to show that e-commerce can generate sales. And his takeaway for his team was what we did on this marketplace rivaled what our biggest branch did in a month. So it's those types of things. So my takeaway here is why invest in a marketplace? Begin to look at your due diligence, which is what are your competitors doing? What are your competitors selling on a marketplace? Which ones are they using, and which ones have the features and functions you'd like that maybe they have? So that goes a long way towards helping you invest in the right marketplace solution. But a big driver these days is two things. One, a lot of the marketplaces that we're finding in B2B across the vertical market landscape here is they're becoming de facto supply chain planning tools because transparency is a big, big thing out there. And a lot of investing in marketplaces is not just done to find product and find sellers and buyers. It's also to find out how to gain more transparency into beyond tier one when those sources dry up. So yeah, there's a lot of factors here, but it all comes down to investing in a marketplace. It comes down to what's the right fit for your organization and what is the ROI for selling maybe a token amount of products to see if they work for you and kind of go from there. So general, yes, but specifically investment has to begin with a strategy and due diligence to what do you really want to do to offset your other channels.
Great answer. Thanks. Anything to add there, Tom?
Yeah, I'll just add some comments about the B2B side of things. There are a lot of B2B unique business requirements, and some of those take place in the commerce engine. Some of them take place all in commerce plus marketplace. So some things, for example, on the commerce side, you may have credit limits, multiple payment types, organizational modeling, approval workflows that can happen in the commerce engine with or without a marketplace. Some things that have to happen both in the commerce engine and the marketplace would be things like RFQ quoting, multiple ship to addresses, tiered pricing or volume pricing, contract negotiated pricing. So there are some elements that have to happen in both commerce and marketplace. And some of the vendors have different levels of B2B capabilities, depending on the scale of what you're looking for.
And if I can just follow up for 1 second here, what we're seeing with some of the marketplaces out there is that, Tom just mentioned kind of the full suite of comprehensive tools that each of these marketplaces have, and the marketplace providers you just talked about have that in too. But one of the specific trends we're seeing that is a big deal with companies across the board here is what kind of value add are you giving me in addition to this targeted tool set? So for instance, I'm going to talk about one specifically: aerospace, parts history, part availability, whole track record on recertification. That paperwork is hugely important as a value add. Another one, you see this in the construction space quite a bit, is financing. So you're seeing much more value add come on board here that's influencing the bang for the buck you get in how you want to invest, in what kind of marketplace you want to invest in. So look at the value added tool set, in addition to what other kind of varied features they have. Complications are complications, but features are becoming more readily available to kind of deal with those, because that's a unique B2B buy. So a lot more of that coming online.
Great. Good point. Good points. All right. There's another. We've got maybe time for two if we do them pretty quickly here. This is one that was actually asked a couple times. I'll ask this specific one because it kind of all encompasses them. We are in the pre-planning stages for our own marketplace, and one of the early steps is to choose a platform. Right, you came to the right place. How much time should be set aside for platform selection?
I can jump in with that one. So it depends on the scope of what you want to do. We're doing a lot of strategy and platform selection engagements now. In fact, across 4 different continents, we have projects underway. The shortest is usually a couple of weeks, and that can be with just high-level epics or high-level requirements and timelines and planning. More typically, it may be a 4 to 8 week engagement if you want to deep dive into some of the unique requirements, which may drive a better fit for one vendor versus another vendor. So for example, technology stack integrations, unique business requirements, the level of integrations that are needed, some of those capabilities that if you need to get into a deeper dive, that may be, again, in that 4 to 8 week time frame. Traditional, B2C retail, where it's physical goods, can be on the shorter range, several weeks if it's a fairly standard business model.
And very quickly on that one, there is just, because digital is impacting B2B so fast these days, this is a lot of trial and errors going on, but we've had companies tell us over and over again when they're doing this marketplace assessment stuff, the be all to end all is not the technology. There's great technology out there. Where companies tell us they're failing and want to do a better job is they didn't figure out the end zone to end zone strategy for what is the best fit across the board that fits within our organization and what we really want to do in terms of why we do any kind of marketplace. So technology is just one part of it. Figuring out what's best for the enterprise is probably the bigger enchilada. A lot of companies tell us they wish they had done better.
That's a great point, and then leads directly into our next question, which is something that was another one that was asked kind of recently here, actually about half an hour ago, related to vendor aggregation networks. And that's, of course, one of these key factors as well in terms of getting the right sellers matched with the right buyers and having that proper parity. And there's a lot of confusion about vendor aggregation networks, the ones offered by these vendors in some cases. And the question here is pretty simple. It's one we hear at a lot of trade shows. What is the main difference between these players that we're talking about here and Channel Advisor?
Yeah, good question. So Channel Advisor kind of led the van category by connecting a bunch of small sellers and some bigger brands as well into multiple marketplaces. So if you want to sell on Amazon and Walmart and Newegg and some of the other big marketplaces, Channel Advisor, as a small seller, you sign up with Channel Advisor, and they aggregate all the sellers and also syndicate the products out to all the different marketplaces. They also automate some of the order management, so orders coming in, order status, shipping status, tracking all that is a very important part of onboarding sellers. As I mentioned, marketplaces are two-sided platforms. You need sellers and you need buyers. If you don't have enough sellers, your buyers aren't going to find enough things to buy. So it's very important to find enough sellers to engage them properly, support them properly, and make it easier for them to integrate into your platform. Of course, there's another fee for using Channel Advisor. As you start adding a percentage here for a GMV for the marketplace platform, plus a percentage for payment processing, plus a percentage for a van, you start losing a percent here, percent there. Those can add up. So other options like Mirakl has their Mirakl Connect, which includes a few thousand. Marketplacer has M Connect, which lets you quickly integrate to some of the commerce platforms. VTEX enables the VTEX sellers to integrate, VTEX merchants to integrate as sellers into the marketplace. So a lot of different options there that can reduce some of that cost of adding, using a third-party van. So pros and cons in weighing that. And maybe there's a plan where you phase in, phase out one approach towards another approach.
And
We can talk for an hour about that.
I may just quickly sum up with something, just a little different thought on that, which is, I've been around for so long that I remember the Great Recession, 2008 through 2010. I remember online retailers just holding on by their fingertips to stay in business. I remember one company that was struggling, and they looked at everything top to bottom on their marketplace. They found that they were letting their data product feed slip. My point is, you're only as good as you monitor and make use of the technology you select. And that was a huge takeaway for some of these online retailers back in the last recession. Same thing now, right? People are trying to figure out how to use marketplace on the B2B side. You're only as good as you use the technology to make it for the best fit for your enterprise.
Great point. Well, I think we are getting pretty close to our time here. I want to give folks a couple minutes break before you rush off to your next meeting. I'm sure everybody's got a full day here, but thank you very much for participating. And thank you, Mark, for sharing the insights from the Digital Commerce 360 reports and your wisdom from so many years in the commerce and marketplace space.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again, everybody, for participating in our event, and look forward to a copy of the slide deck and a link to the recording in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.